This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions and answer them here in video format. Ton of questions to get into. Let's jump into it, man. First question comes from Corey. Says, Abdul Carter is scratching the surface as a defensive end, as young as 21 years old. He is he's even younger than Travis Hunter. He will only get better. What does a projected lineup of Carter, Collins, Harris, and Garrett compare to the Philadelphia Eagles? So Mike Hall would probably be in that starting lineup. I think that would be an upgrade. But yeah, Collins, Mike Hall, with Shelby Harris's rotation, Myles Garrett, Abdul Carter, it would probably be one of the better defensive lines in football, especially if Abdul is ready to hit the ground running coming out of college. He is super young, right? 21 years old. There might be a bit of an adjustment period for him, especially on the defensive line. But I do think he has the raw talent and skill to be able to be fairly productive in year one. The fact that you have Myles Garrett, right, and I think that's the big – Abdul Carter would be your answer for somebody as talented as like Jalen Carter. I think those two have similar potential as far as like how good they could be at their position group. The Eagles have nothing on that defensive line that compares with Myles Garrett. And – that is why the Browns would probably have if they are anywhere equal and then you add Myles Garrett, it's a landslide, right? The Myles Garrett part of this equation changes everything for Philly, right? Because none of those players on Philly's defensive line, albeit good, are Myles Garrett. Dog Watch says, Q, what do you think the plan is for left tackle? Are the Browns going to draft for that position as a starter or as a starting left tackle already in the Browns lineup for this season? I don't think the Browns are going to draft to get a starter. I think the Browns are going to use some combination of Tevin Jenkins, DeJuan Jones to play left tackle. And maybe they draft somebody to be a developmental piece, but I really do think that that's the plan at left tackle. Because it's the only thing that makes sense with how they're structured, right? A lot of the thought process was, we signed Tevin Jenkins to trade Wyatt Teller, but why in the world would Tevin Jenkins sign here play guard when he knows he's going to be behind Wyatt Teller and they haven't traded Wyatt Teller yet? I think Tevin's going to play left tackle or be in the left tackle picture with DeJuan, and I think that's going to be what they're going to roll into with the season with Cornelius Lucas as a backup, and I think that's fine, Not the greatest left tackle thing, but does give you another year to see what DeJuan can give you if he gets to play. Ty says, do you think if we take Abdul Carter, what type of numbers do you expect from him in the first year? I think 8 sacks would be a fair bar for Abdul in year one. And then I think he should become a double-digit sack guy. When did Myles become a permanent double-digit sack guy? Like 2 years into his career, 3 years, 2019, 2020 is when he started to become Myles. So by his third, fourth year, I'd expect him to be, a perennial double-digit sack guy. The next question comes from John, who says, I know one of the big opinions amongst a group of fans is the idea of skipping young QBs this year to go after some of the stronger up-and-coming classes. Does the Deshaun Watson failure have the potential to scare the front office off of trading a Hall to get the pick they would need to get to draft a guy like if they're not good enough to not be in the top 3 in next year's draft? So basically you're asking me, will the Deshaun Watson trade give this front office cold feet when it comes to being aggressive at the quarterback position? I would think not. Because if we're really assessing this, right, and the driving force behind the Deshaun Watson trade was not Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski, it was Jimmy Haslam, which is what's been out there and what Jimmy himself has confirmed, then that means that the Browns if Andrew Berry and Kevin were confident in whatever they were going to do next year, right? Let's say they fall in love with somebody in the top 3. Let's use Norris Sellers as an example and want to go after him. And I think they will have the confidence to put together a package to go after him, because it would be buy-in from all 3 levels. And it's not like with the Deshaun Watson thing where you're adding on a $230 million guaranteed contract. The draft assets that you traded for Deshaun, that hurt a little bit, but what's really a pain in the ass right now is the contract. If you just trade the draft assets, it will hurt if the quarterback does not work out, but you're not attaching the contract to it too, which would make them more willing to go after it. Big Griff says, hey, Q, love the vids. If you had the chance to draft any quarterback prospect since 2018 without any knowledge of what they turn into, who would be my favorite prospect and why? My favorite prospects for the Browns. Let me try to go through draft classes. So last year, I thought Drake May and Jaden Daniels would have been what Andrew Berry would have went after. 2022, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson. I think I would have been fine taking one of those prospects in 2022. 2021 was the Trevor Lawrence year. I think they would have took Trevor, but I don't think Trevor's the perfect prospect for them, even though Trevor was seen as like an amazing prospect when he came out. So maybe that's revisionist history. I would say the prospects that feel like they're the best fit for Kevin, I would say Drake May. Drake May, Jaden Daniels, C.J. Stroud. Those would be the 3 prospects, I think, who would fit Kevin the most. And the prospects I think they would have been the most excited about. And if I had to rank them in terms of how excited they would be, I'm thinking it's probably Jaden, Drake May, Ty, and then C.J. Stroud third. Just because C.J. Stroud is not the athlete that those 2 are. And I think they really want an athlete at the quarterback position. Jam Stack says, hey, Q, I see a lot of talk about Jackson Dart for a 3rd or 2nd round pick. Who would you prefer the Browns take at 33 or beyond, Dart or Milroe? I'm taking Milroe over Dart as a personal preference myself. Thanks for the content, Q. Yeah, I would have Milroe over Dart. And honestly, I prefer Will Howard over Dart. I don't get the Jackson Dart hype. I've had my guy Kyron on. He kind of explained why he thinks that Jackson Dart could be useful, but even he thinks Jackson Dart's a 3rd round conversation, not a 1st round conversation. And if I'm going 3rd round, I think my favorite 3rd round quarterback is Will Howard, no doubt. I would prefer Will Howard to Jackson Dart, no doubt about it. But yeah, I would definitely go Milroe over Dart. I agree with you. Next question. Christian says, what is the answer for the offense to be productive this year? What do you think the offense will look like if we totally revamp in the draft, getting Sanders at 2, Junkins at 33, UNC back, Junkins or the UNC back at 33, maybe an O-lineman? I really don't think it's going to take a lot to make this offense more productive this year based on what we saw last year. A lot of the offense's awful production throughout a 17-game sample was because so much of that sample had bad quarterback play, like historically bad quarterback play attached to it. If the Browns can just get mediocre quarterback play, right, which is what they hope Kirk Cousins provides if they end up making the move for Kirk, then that will be an upgrade that will prove to give you tangible results. Last year, per 17 games, the Cleveland Browns had 258 points. Kirk Cousins, on a 17-game average, produced about 20 points a game, right? That would be, so last year the Browns on offense gave you about 13 points a game. Kirk Cousins, when he was on offense with the Atlanta Falcons, averaged about 20 points a game with the Falcons offense. That would be enough to go from 32 to 24. Now, on paper, that doesn't seem like a giant leap, but it is a significant leap, right? Going from 32 to 24. And I think a leap like that for the Browns offense is possible. Now you're asking me, well, how much does a leap from 32 to 24 buy you in terms of wins? I'll tell you. That if you multiply out Kirk's number, 20 points a game, by 17, you subtract that from the 258 points that the Browns had last year, that's a difference of 79 points, right? So presumably, if the Browns had Kirk Cousins last year, playing like how Kirk played last year, the Browns would have scored 79 more points. How much of a difference is that? Well, if the Browns had scored 79 points or 79 more points last year, that would have been good enough to flip 7 losses into wins. 79 points that Kirk Cousins can get you that you could not get last year with Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Bailey Zapp and Jameis Winston and Deshaun Watson. That 79-point difference could have been the difference of winning 3 games to winning 10 games. This is why I think that simply getting better at quarterback and improving other things on the roster would make a great deal of a difference, because a lot of the Browns' losses, while they had a ton of them, were on the margins, and they were on the margins because their quarterback play was literally that bad. When Jameis was playing at a functional level, the offense didn't look terrible. It was only with specific people that the offense looked unlivable. I tend to take that as, man, the quarterback play was that bad this last year, and if you just get a little bit better, it changes your fortunes dramatically. That's why I don't think it's going to take some giant overhaul for the Browns to win a lot more games this year or improve the offense a ton or have a visible improvement to the offense. Because, again, I think so much of what happened last year was not just your offense being bad, but your quarterback play specifically being one of the biggest burdens that we've seen the Browns have to deal with since 2011. Like, it was historical, not just bad. You go to Kirk, you're not going to be historically bad. You're going to be mediocre to average, and that is such a jump from where you were last year. Nathaniel says, love your show, Q. When Pickett was with the Steelers, from what I remember, the Steelers people were yelling for Matt Canada to be fired, even booing him during games. Could there be more with Pickett to be developed because his OC was bad in Pittsburgh, or is that the real Kenny Pickett? Probably a little bit of both, right? I would say probably a little bit of both. I don't think Kenny Pickett was completely held back because of his offensive coordinator. I think some of it was that Kenny Pickett's just simply not that good. But also, I can see where Kenny could have probably been better if he had a better coaching. Cold takes from the land. Hey, Q, what's your definitive thoughts on Kyle McCord and Tyler Shuck? I personally like them both in the 3rd, 4th round range if they're still on the board. I haven't got to watch a ton of Tyler Shuck or Kyle McCord. Thing with Tyler Shuck, he's super old, right? I get huge red flags about older quarterback prospects, especially older quarterback prospects who got good for 1 year. Huge red flag there, right? Because you're playing against kids and you're an adult, a grown-ass adult at that. Kyle McCord, I watched a little bit of him at Ohio State and some of him at Syracuse. I can't say like I'm in the Kyle McCord fan club, but I think Kyle McCord makes sense in day 3 of the draft, and he's one of those quarterbacks in that Dylan Gabriel range of quarterbacks where you're like, yeah, they're fine. GP 78700 says, if the Browns wanted to make sure they could get Milroe because the draft is pretty deep with talent, how many extra good picks would you pick up by trading back to 15 or so and picking up Milroe? If you get a bunch of extra picks in the 2nd and 3rd because of the depth of this draft, wouldn't that be one of the best options? I got level with you, man. I'm just not a big fan of trading back, especially like trading out the top 10. I hate. I don't want to trade out the top 5. I hate trading back out the top 10. It never ends as good as people think it's going to end. Yeah, you add more players, but are those players good? Probably not. Like if you get a top 5 pick, don't waste it. Take a good player in the top 5. Take the best prospect you can when you get a top 3 pick. You got to do it. Bird in hand, right? Unless there's like no good prospects in the top 3 that year, then trade back, do whatever the hell you want to do. But in a year where there's good prospects to get in the top 3, just pick a player, right? If Milroe's there at 33, if you want to trade up into the first round to go get Jalen Milroe, do what you got to do. But let's just use the top pick to get premium players. Look, the best players on this team: Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and think about it like this. Who are the best players on the Browns right now? Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. Where were those 2 players picked? In the top 5. You want to, like, those kind of players you get in the top 5, more than likely. Sometimes you get them outside of it, but most of the time you get those guys in the top 5. Let's get somebody else like that. I don't have a problem with that. But if you trade back, you might get a couple role players, some good starters, maybe a Pro Bowler here or there, but you're probably not going to get somebody who could be another all-pro level guy. And that's what I want with the top 3 pick, So I wouldn't be in favor of that at all. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.